So I know I tend to come on VINwiki most of the time and talk about how much money I lose on the cars at auction, the huge, enormous losses that I have taken, and there have been some big lumps recently, but there is occasional times where I have a big hit, like my Lamborghini Countach, which I traded towards my Bugatti Veyron. But there was another very big one at an auction, Barrett-Jackson, in Houston a few years ago, which was the biggest risk of my life, the biggest run of cars that I have ever sent to auction, and it actually turned out really well. So I was selling 5 cars, no reserve, in Barrett-Jackson in-person auction, all the cars selling no reserve, and I had gone to all the trouble to make these cars be all that they can be. And the headliner of the Hoovie collection was definitely my Hemi Superbird, which was a nightmare purchase. I bought it on Bring a Trailer for $130,000, and it was just grossly misrepresented by the seller. Someone had put lowering springs, modern coilovers on it that had the wrong stance. It was stanced like a dragster, and the seller decided to jack up the shocks to make it look level and normal, but then the shocks had no shock absorption, so it just bounced like a pogo stick down the road. And then it overheated immediately when it showed up, never ran right, electrical problems, just so many things. But it was a real deal Hemi Superbird, extremely rare. And after I bought it, there were 2 Superbird sales for over $1 million. So the rising tide floats all boats. There's only a couple hundred Hemi Superbirds in the world, so I thought, well, that hopefully has raised mine up to, hey, for $300,000, $500,000, maybe you could restore this one and have a Hemi Superbird, because one of the cars that sold for $1 million wasn't numbers matching. So very surprising in that sense. Just huge run on Hemi Superbirds. So I thought, okay, I'm sitting really pretty to sell this thing. But I needed to sell some other cars, so I thought, well, why not assemble an entire collection to send down? So in addition to the Hemi Superbird, which I had fixed the overheating by putting in a different radiator and fixed the suspension by figuring all of that out, and then a tune and a lot of electrical fixes, it was a good driving car. Still, I mean, not perfect, but a decent, nice driving car in really nice cosmetic shape. So it looked really good. Went down the road. It had a crate Hemi in it, which put out, I think, over 700 horsepower, something crazy like that. Modern Tremec 5-speed, so it could go down the highway without screaming. So it was cool in that sense, but far from original. Had a roll bar welded in it, that kind of stuff. Originally, it was raced, I guess, in period and wrecked at one point. So that was the other ding against it, is it's in the Hemi Superbird registry as a partial rebody. But when they inspected it at an auction, which at these auctions, they have experts. And one Dave Weiss, he is the Mopar guy. He came in and crawled all over my Superbird, and he made sure that it was a real Hemi and not like a full rebody. And he was looking at the date codes on the stamps on all the body panels, because they don't have VINs on them, but they have sort of date coded stamps. And everything was from the right time with the Hemis. And also it had the right reinforcements that only the Hemis had in certain places. And the only part that he thought that wasn't original was on the front right side. So he thought, well, that's probably where the car was hit, but this is a real deal Hemi Superbird. So it was nice to have that validation, vindication, because if it wasn't, if it was a rebody, then obviously I was in trouble. But the other cars that I bought to the auction weren't nearly as prolific. A Mazda Miata that I bought for Car Issues, my TV show on Motor Trend, but it was a really nice low mileage car, I think around 20,000 miles, white, but you know, nothing special. A 90 Miata, they sold a gazillion of them. Another one where there's a lot of them out there, a 1984 K5 Blazer that was a bit of a disappointment. Bought it on my Motor Trend show. The paint job, it had been repainted and it wasn't done all that well. It had, you know, a little bit of rust and Bono that you could see in the paint, but it ran and drove fine, pretty low mileage, but yeah, very brown, UPS truck sort of brown. And I paid a lot for it and spent quite a bit fixing it, so I didn't have very high hopes on that one. The next was a GMC Cyclone, which was really cool. This was the fastest accelerating truck, or really one of the fastest accelerating cars in its day. It could beat Ferraris. It could beat a lot of exotics because of that 4.3 liter V6 under the hood, a big turbo and all-wheel drive. And they looked so dang cool. And I bought this one for my show for a steal, $18,000. But it was a little bit rough, so I spent a lot going through making it as nice as it possibly could. And the last car was a really neat spec of a Porsche 928 S4 that actually had a manual transmission conversion, which is very hard to do. I think the receipt was something like $15,000 to do this conversion, which is nuts. It didn't make any sense for someone to pay that money. They just find and buy a manual one, but somebody did. It's a low mileage car. Well, not that low, 70, 80,000 miles. Not bad, but really nice shape, a really cool sort of salmon color with a maroon interior. So a neat spec when it came to Porsche and in great shape. So I had my cars all slicked up, cleaned up, ready to go, sort as they could, and shipped down the auction about $1,000 a car to ship it down there. And we were off to the races. And we started with the Miata. It went on Thursday where the cheaper cars sell, and I didn't have very high expectations. Every single Miata is worth $10,000 to $15,000. I paid $11,000 for mine and spent a little bit doing a timing belt and that kind of stuff, but didn't really expect much. It sold for $25,000, which was an auction record for a 1990 Mazda Miata. With fees, that's $27,500 is what the buyer ended up paying, which is way more than what the car is worth new. And there were two people in the room bidding on it, obviously, but the one that I saw was a wife that kept elbowing her husband, and he kept kind of reluctantly having to wave his hand to buy it, and that is who ended up with the Miata. So I was off to the races because I made on that car $10,000 on a Mazda Miata right off the bat. Holy smokes, is this really happening? And then the next one was the K5 Blazer, which I really didn't expect much out of because of its condition, being a little bad repaint and, a little rust here and there. It sold for $30,000. I bought it for $22,000, spent a couple of grand fixing it up. And then with the fees, obviously, they're taking away a little bit in the shipping, in the entry fee, and in the seller commission, 7 or 8%. But I still managed to make $2,000 on that K5 Blazer that I thought I was going to lose my butt on. I was absolutely thrilled. But then the balloon got popped a little bit. With auctions, the more cars you have in the sale, the bigger spread. You come out okay. If you're risking one or two cars, it's probably pretty nervous because, it'd be a make or break. But since I had such a big spread and obviously did so well in the first two, it didn't hurt as much on the GMC Cyclone, but I still probably would have kept it because it sold for $20,000. I bought it for $18,000 and I spent a lot fixing it up. I lost $7,000 on that one. A major setback because I fixed all the paint, all the mechanicals went through and got that thing really, really nice. And there hasn't been a Cyclone that sold for 20 grand in forever. So I don't know what happened with that one. Really a bummer, but made up for it with the Porsche 928 S4. That one sold for $43,000. And I thought I had paid a lot for it, paying a little over $30,000. I think $32,000 is what I paid for it, and then a few grand sorting it out. With the fees, I made a little over $4,000 on this 928 S4. I couldn't believe it. But the Superbird, that was a total mystery. I had no idea what was going to happen. I spent tens of thousands of dollars on it, sorting it out as much as I possibly could. Bought it for $130,000, but we had the two last Hemi Superbird sell for $1 million and then I think $1.5 million. Unfortunately though, the Superbird decided to flood itself and not start when it came time to cross the block. So they were in there with starting fluid and messing around with it, and then eventually it sprang to life, this big roar from the Hemi, and then actually drove up. But there was that sort of bad incident that got people to probably second guess themselves. And then the gold wheels that were on it, I wanted to change it to the appropriate Mopar rally wheels that it would have had, but since the hubs were changed and the brakes were changed and the offset was all different, when I tried to put them on, they didn't fit last minute. And so I had to run with what she brung, which were these gold wheels that didn't look right on the car. So didn't bring $500,000, didn't bring $300,000. It brought $170,000, which I would have been thrilled with had I not known what the last two Hemi Superbirds sold for. But with those last two, there was one bidder on both of those cars. He missed out on the last one, and then he was not going to miss out on the next one. And once he got his Hemi Superbird, he was done. He was gone. So there wasn't somebody else to keep running these things up to $1 million. At least that's what I think. Because since there hasn't been one that has sold for $500,000, I think. But $170,000 I made on the car that I thought was the biggest scam that I've ever been scammed upon. I made $14,000. Really, really good. All in, $24,000 is what I made on this auction week of 5 cars, which was, I couldn't believe it. I was so darn happy. But the thing about Barrett-Jackson is you can get a check. They'll send it to you in the mail, a couple weeks later after the auction is over. Or you can use that for in-store credit and buy something else. You can imagine what I did. I had $300,000 or so of money burning a hole in my pocket, and there was an SLR McLaren, there was a Ford GT, there was a lot of stuff. The first one across the block that I really wanted, a yellow salvage title, 2005 Ford GT, and it sold for a little over $200,000, I think $250,000. I thought, that's too much. And what I really didn't like about it is it had been modified. It had a really loud exhaust on it. It was just too loud. I didn't think it would be very fun to drive. I had to take that back. So the modifications, I think, hurt it for me more than the salvage title, because the yellow color from the factory, really cool. So I passed on that. But the SLR McLaren, I did not pass on. And I bid that thing up to $275,000, which was a lot considering it had been on fire briefly once, but it was still clean title. It was low mileage, fixed perfectly. It was just a minor little trunk fire from a battery short, so not a big deal, and had all the documentation of it being fixed, and just sort of as a ding on the Carfax, fire damage reported. But spent all my money. All that money that I got from all those cars was totally gone. And of course, at the same time, I'm doing Barrett-Jackson's live TV coverage on History and FYI, which I've been doing for years now. And at the end of the TV coverage, I was walking sort of back up to the block to give my microphone back, take my earpiece out, and go look at my SLR McLaren. But then I saw a Maybach coming up onto the auction block. A 62 with the partition, long wheelbase, all the options, the electrochromatic roof. This thing would have had a $400,000 sticker new, and the bidding started really slow. It was struggling to get out of the 30s. And these convention centers are huge, and I'm probably 100 yards away from the block. So I did probably what was a record 100-yard dash for me. Definitely not like an NFL player, but I ran and there were pieces of equipment for like the radio and things falling off of me. Thankfully, a security guard picked it up, but I sprinted as fast as I could, basically fell into the auction block, put my hand up, bid 40, one bid, got this Maybach 62 for 90% off. It had over 100,000 miles on it. It was owned by a guy who had a chain of liquor stores, so I guess he was driven around to his liquor stores to sample his product, or I don't know, but a Maybach 62 partition with the roof, long wheelbase, for $40,000. Oh my God. But that meant then I had to write a check to Barrett-Jackson. That wasn't the goal.
This month of VINwiki content is brought to you by Bridgestone, and the most exciting news out of Bridgestone is the new release of their Turanza Prestige tire. It is their flagship Grand Touring tire, targeting luxury SUVs, crossovers, and sedans, like a Mercedes S-Class or a BMW X7. And this gives you all the whisper quiet ride that you want in a high-end luxury experience, as well as the wet and dry weather performance that we love from Bridgestone. And you'll get some of the greatest longevity they've ever had on street tires, 70,000 mile limited warranty. So we love Bridgestone for their sports car and supercar tires in the Potenza range. Of course, the Dueler AT Ascent that I've got on my Porsche Cayenne, I absolutely love. But whatever you're looking to find tires for, Bridgestone has something great. So check them out now at the link in the description below to learn more about the Bridgestone family of tires.